Hello, my name is Sue Steele. I'm the host for today for this Get the Knack podcast that's sponsored by the National Academy of Construction. And this is the second of two that we're talking about the data center explosion. And I'm just thrilled to continue this conversation and bring you up to date as listeners as to what we're going to be covering. Last time we talked a lot about just the whole, I guess, the multi factors that go into an explosion in an industry that we as constructors and engineers are trying to keep up with. And we are going to continue this today to talk about the technology side. It's more about building smarter, better data centers, which some of you have heard the term ConTech. And we're going to talk a little bit more about just how to approach it. So the first one was more about what and why, and this is now about how. So I'm thrilled to have Sandy Hamby back, who's CEO of President of MOCA Systems. And also we have today Brett Adamczyk, who is, I hope I got that right, Brett.
Did. Well done.
Great. We have a very informal podcast, so we'll just keep it that way. You're president of the MOCA Systems Software Division. I understand you recently joined the company, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's what I think might have been going on. But I'm letting you both introduce yourselves. Let me just start by saying I am a member of NAC. I was inducted in 2021, and I had about a 30-year career in engineering and construction. So I'm ready to kick this off. So, Sandy, why don't you start with yourself with a self introduction, and then we'll let Brett finish.
Sure. Thank you, Sue. I'm also a member of NAC. I'm an architect by education who spent my entire career in construction, president and CEO of MOCA Systems Inc. And at the heart of MOCA Systems Inc. is a guiding principle called transforming the industry, which aligns very closely with the tagline for NAC, which is transforming the industry to build a better nation. I'm honored to be part of this podcast, and I can't wait to talk about the data center boom. Brett?
Thanks, Sandy and Sue. Appreciate you guys obviously having me on. I am the president of the software division at MOCA Systems. Prior to that, I was running Newforma, which is another software platform in the construction space, mostly focused on the A&E side. And prior to that, I was in the investment world in private equity, working with and buying and selling software businesses. So, Sue, just in regards to your question of me joining recently, it depends on what you define recent as. I joined Mocha about 18 months ago. So, I'd like to think that I'm a wily vet at this point, but I guess that depends on who you're talking to. We've got some people that have been here for 25 years. So I'm a relatively young pup in that regard.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And with the half life of technology, I guess I don't know. That could be ancient, a year and a half. Everything
Exactly.
changes so fast, unbelievable. So you're definitely seasoned. So we're going to just continue to talk a little bit about this whole data center challenge. Sandy, thank you for the reminder about the tagline and that connection. Building a better industry, transforming the industry to build a better nation. And we'd really like to drill down today into how technology is a factor in this data center explosion. And Sandy, I'd like to really start with you. You were on the first podcast. Maybe you can kind of brief our listeners on what we covered, just a little bit about technology. I think we touched on Touchplan and some of the other tools that are available. But if you could just tell us about, how does technology fit?
Sure. I was recently at a conference and I heard a CEO of a data center say, if you spend $800,000 a month for 2025 years, that's how much money is being spent today in the data center world. In order to actually affect that in today's labor shortage market, technology is at the key. It's at the very source of what we need to do. They're not complicated data centers. It's more of a repetitive process. but you need teams to be able to plan better, to make faster decisions, to be able to recover effectively and collaboratively. And I think technology is really at the core of that concept. It's about empowering people and building smarter, more resilient projects. I believe the platform, similar to Touchplan, enables everybody on a job site to quickly adjust as things happen. And it also provides the capability to be able to consistently replicate, which is key to the process of data center building right now. Once again, I don't think you could possibly go forward without being more efficient in the field using technology.
I'm so glad you highlighted that. We hear a lot about doing more with less, and of course, AI and a lot of the recent technology tools are really making that happen. So, Brett, do you want to add some other thoughts to what Sandy said about technology and that it's kind of a game changer?
I mean, I think technology, Sue, even just going back, right? I mean, when you look at the use of technology in the construction industry, it's still a laggard compared to a lot of the other verticals, right? I think has the second lowest adoption of technology, just above agriculture, right? So we're still kind of in those nascent days, but it is becoming significantly more prevalent, right? And I think what teams are finding is, the benefit of, especially in a market where we have a labor shortage, right? That the ability to have tools and resources and technology that can connect people, that can connect data, that can help drive decisioning and keep people on schedule and be transparent in terms of what's happening from an hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month perspective. Be able to have that historical context is really important, right? I think you've seen a lot of the general contractors, the owners, even the specialty contractors start taking almost like a data first approach to how they're building, how they're managing their schedules, their crews, their supply chains. So, a platform like Touchplan, that helps you with those daily decisions, right? And predictive decision making provides those teams with that level of visibility, and interaction to be able to manage the risks that come up and, the things that can throw you sideways, on any given morning, right? When you're trying to build some of these mega projects, you're invariably going to run into problems, right? I don't know how many buildings or how many, built environments, right? You don't run into something where, an electrical outlet can't go where it was planned. And, you got to adjust, you got to pivot. But having that data at your forefront from a real-time decisioning and planning perspective and understanding, I think helps keep people aligned and increases productivity. And that's what we're doing at Touchplan.
Oh, that sounds great. Projects are a team sport, right? And you mentioned just the connectivity and how many people are involved in the project, all the things that can go wrong. So maybe we'll just pause right here for a minute. Could either of you maybe just give us a little picture of how TouchPlan works? And then we can continue talking about, some of these challenges.
Yeah. So, I mean, happy to just give you a high level overview, right? I mean, it's kind of, it's simple, right? And I would think actually that's the feedback that we get the most in terms of one of the reasons people, or one of the main reasons that people choose Touchplan is its ease of use, right? And when you're talking about adoption of technology in the field, at the field level, wanting to get buy-in from a number of different trades and people and be able to use something, I think technology needs to be easy at the heart of it for people to want to use it and adopt it. But when you think about the trailer, right, or the big board or the daily huddle and how people used to plan, you would walk in and you've got a wall full of sticky notes, right? And they're falling off and you can't read the writing and you can't, you've got your weekly work plan. right? Mapped out for everyone to kind of go up there and move sticky notes around or understand what's happening. Well, Touchplan at the heart digitizes that process, right? So you can do that very same thing on your computer, on your iPad, from your phone, right? But begin the daily, weekly, monthly planning and task management of what has to happen at the most granular level from an activity perspective on a job site. Um, right? So that's really what we're doing. If you can visualize that sticky note, board, wall, right, on your computer, on your iPad, bringing it out to the job site, understanding in real time with real data what's happened, what's been completed, what's planned, who's supposed to be where, and what they're doing, right? That's at the heart of what Touchplan does. And then obviously managing things like constraints and pivoting and tying back into the master schedule and aligning the field with the office in terms of what's supposed to happen and when. So that's what Touchplan's doing right now, Sue.
Well, that's great. Sandy, I know you've been in this industry a while. I mean, I'm sure TouchPlan has been a game changer. Tell me a little bit about your perspective on that, how it's improved the schedule, how it's improved the human interaction, the teamwork, the human side.
Well, absolutely. I have been in the field my entire career, and I've always used a P6 type environment, and it's not actually what happens in the field. And so, this whole idea of how could you enable and empower and provide accountability for what's actually going on in the field, and at the same time use the benefits of robotics or other technologies that camera capture, et cetera, that are so important to our efficiency increases in the industry, was something I was very intrigued by. And so much so that I focused an entire company around it. And that's the collaborative approach. Let's not put people in the corners and say, manage through change orders or manage through design it again, architect. It was more of let's work together, enable each other to see what's going on, enable each other to collaboratively recover and use the technology that is available to us. I think it's just extremely powerful, and it adds accountability. Are you really doing what you say you're going to do? And if so, great. If not, why not? And get to the core of the problems. If you could improve 1 square foot of a data center yard, what is it worth? 1 square foot, just taking all the information that's gathered and captured in a platform like Touchplan and say, you know what, this process worked 10% better than that process. Let's use that. And it moves the entire team 1 day earlier so that they can get to the next site when labor is constrained right now. That's super powerful. People have continuous learning with that as well. It helps the trades. In fact, our some of our number one users in the data center environment are the trades because they're so constrained by labor. They want to get to the next job site immediately. So it helps them plan, communicate, and stay aligned, get their teams to the next site, and be able to execute without losing quality. It's where this industry is going. It's where we need to go, and we need to leave it a little bit better than where we found it when we started.
Well,
Yeah, I
that's
mean, I would,
great.
I mean, I would even argue, that the collaborative aspect of this is, the top down kind of management style doesn't necessarily get people to do their best work, right? And I think, you know, the most successful projects that we've found that have used Touchplan are the ones that empower the people, right? I mean, innovation and technology should be used to empower people and provide them with some insight or some ability to, potentially manage their own schedule or understand what's happening and kind of take control of that. And, Touchplan does that with the trades. And as Sandy mentioned, some of them have become our biggest power users, right? I mean, they'll take So when you think about your P6 master schedule, your Microsoft project master schedule, right? The general contractor builds out a plan, and then the subs building out a plan of the GC's plan to manage their own labor in even greater detail than we could ever imagine, right? And they're taking ownership of that. And they take great pride in delivering and doing good work and being on time. So, I think the ability to collaborate towards a successful shared outcome is part of what technology is enabling.
Well, that's great. I like the details about how it is a collaborative tool all the way to the field. Maybe one of you could give me an example. Let's say I'm a superintendent or a foreman or somebody in the field, and I may have a delay. It could be anything from weather to I got the wrong material delivered to the job site. How would I go about, just hypothetically, how do you go about updating Touchplan and running that information through the project as opposed to using the old style with emails or phone calls or those kind of things? Could you give us an example?
I mean, if you recognize that from a material standpoint, something's not showing up on site, right? And that's going to cause you had a team scheduled, call it an electrical trade or a plumber right on site to be able to complete that tie-in. Um, right? You can instantly kind of move that ticket or those activities out and instantly notify those trades that those people, right, might not have to be on site. So they're getting advance notice of being able to reallocate those resources or pivot. And I think, when you're talking about these mega projects, right, it's less about, well, I'm going to have a 2-week delay and more in terms of, well, what else is planned or scheduled that I could use these resources against if, you know, we're going to be waiting on materials for 2 or 3 days. I don't want a crew sitting idle if they don't have to be, right? But then I can really quickly and easily and visually, right, see what else is needed to be done in a particular area, a different area of the building, right? So you can pivot and reallocate and identify those constraint points to reconfigure your schedule to not have to miss a beat or not have to have a week delay, right? You can come back to that work when the materials are there. And it's more that what I like to say is I think, at least from my experience and what I've heard from a lot of customers, it's always been a very reactive industry. And I think what we're trying to do is make it proactive, right? And I think that's one of the greatest powers of TouchPlan, and I think technology in general, the planning platforms and scheduling. And when you have good PMs, good supers, good people that recognize that and have that shared goal, having the ability to be transparent and have that information and data up front to make those decisions, I think is what helps us in the long run.
You
That's
know,
right.
Sue, I'd like to add a little bit to that, just a very interesting example. You know how concrete pours are starting at 3 a.m. and you have the concrete trucks just lined up and everybody's, you know, trying to get things done very efficiently and effectively because there's a time limit on each truck that's coming in. As concrete super started using Touchplan because you can update in the field. Everybody can be sitting in their trucks, even on different job sites, and be able to work as a team collaboratively to adjust. Well, this gentleman was able to identify the truck order, and if one of the trucks got in too early, he would send them around to get back in line so that he could have the oldest concrete truck deliver first. I thought it was brilliant. And there's a lot of uses like that.
Yeah,
Collaboration on the fly.
that's great. Well, while we're on the field and take up, if you will, talk about our industry right now and how this will transform the industry because we're looking at skill building, new approaches. I mean, how is this sort of tool and this approach going to really help transform our industry, especially in the field side?
Yeah, I'll start with that, and then Brett, you can follow. The labor shortages are key in the industry right now. You know, between 2008, when the recession hit, construction was hit hard right around 2012. Then we had COVID. A lot of the industry skilled workforce did not return to construction, so we're extremely labor constrained right now. And efficiency, the ability to collaborate on the fly, enables crews to get to the next job site is exactly what Brett talked about, where, okay, this is a problem. We didn't get the materials as expected. How can we readjust? Because there's no time for downtime right now. Uh, People are making profit by getting their teams to the next site and not sacrificing quality and technology of all kinds, whether it's robotics, whether it's collaborative planning, like we're talking about, whether it's capture through cameras, um, communication, faster communication, and then finally accountability helps everybody succeed. It helps the architect adjust as they need to, or the engineer. It helps the subs get their labor forces to the next activity without impacting or delaying. And right now, people aren't interested in maximizing the delays so that they make their profit at the end. They're interested in efficient delivery and getting their jobs to the next, or their crews to the next job site. Brett, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think you kinda nailed it, right, Sandy? I mean, it is important, but I think when you're talking about the impact of technology, and context stacks and what it means, it's more than just, I think the labor shortage, right? I think we're entering an era, and I touched on it, I think a little bit at the beginning in terms of data first. A lot of people are looking to use, AI and data to help with exactly those things. I mean, we're, standardizing decisioning. We're, accelerating the learning curve. I mean, I think given the labor shortage, right? If we can put tools and resources in people's hands that are going to shorten that learning curve and allow them to be more productive on sites or give them the information up front, that's gonna allow them to complete their task on time or use and shift resources differently to be able to complete things, why wouldn't we be doing it, right? And I think that's one of the things that the conversations that we have a lot is, you know, instead of, shunning technology, we should be embracing it and the cost of it as well, right? Everyone wants to build as good and as cheap as possible to make the most profit, right? But at the end of the day, you know, I think it's almost more important that you have tools on your job site that are going to allow you to not have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 4 month delays, right? When you're talking about data centers, and I'm sure you guys kind of touched on this, right? Every one of those days costs dollars, right? And upfront, you're negotiating over, thousands of dollars for platforms like ours that are costing you $800,000 a day in delays or not being able to turn on capacity in data centers, right? And I just think we lose sight of that sometimes. That if there are things that are going to help you throughout this process, we need to be embracing them. And the construction technology stack is something that I think people really should be embracing and understanding how you can use it and what it does for the people. I'm still a very people first person. I think there's no substitute for experience, especially on these mega projects and job sites where, computers shouldn't be making decisions for us. You need that experience. You need that guy that's been around for 20 years. But let's put the resources, the data information in his hands so that he can use his experience to make the best decisions possible.
And let's tie it back to the data center industry itself. I started out with saying how much money is being spent today. Heard a CEO of a data center company. His advice: keep it simple. 80% Toyota and 20% innovation. Technology is enabling that 20% innovation, but the 80% Toyota, we all remember how Toyota transformed how cars were made into a simple process that's reliable. It's got a template, it's repeatable. That's what technology is enabling us to do now. And I think that's incredibly important as we're up against some of the challenges on these mega projects.
Well, we've been focusing on data centers, but I think ConTech, applies pretty broadly in the industry, not only in data centers, but in all of our projects. Could y'all describe a little bit about what you're seeing in the industry changes that ConTech has made a difference on projects? I think you mentioned there might be one in Texas that was kind of interesting, a case study where you could really see the impact of the tools.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one in Texas, and even, I was just out in Kansas last week at a large EV battery plant, right? And I think the message was consistent in taking away and talking to the people that were leading those two projects. I mean, the data center in Texas said, like, this technology's changed my life, right? I've reduced my stress so much that, that I can be a better parent, a husband, right? Believe it or not. And, um, that when I was out in Kansas, it was so interesting because the senior super said, through the use of Touchplan, I've reduced my team's meetings on a weekly basis. My other supers right across all the trades. He's like, I've given each of them 5 to 6 hours of their week back by using Touchplan. Right. So he goes, I'm selling sleep. These guys know exactly. He's like, what used to, I was talking to one of the biggest electrical trades, and he goes, you know, I used to not know what I was doing the next day, and that would keep me up at night. Right. Because you never know what you're going to walk into in the morning. And he goes, I know what I'm doing 2 weeks out now. I have a full plan. I have full visibility. He goes, I go home and I can go to bed and I can sleep. So, and when you think about those things, I mean, those are things that are hard to quantify, right? In terms of paying or putting a dollar amount on your people's ability to show up to work and feel like they can be productive,
That's
right?
phenomenal. I mean,
And
I
and
think
having
about, yeah.
and have
Go
a
ahead.
sense of calm almost in terms of how they're going to attack their day. So yeah, I think those are just two really, really interesting examples.
So, and we could tie it to the safety concerns that we have in our industry now. Technology, context really in a position to support and improve the safety performance across the entire industry. Just as Brett said, if you're sleeping better, you're performing better. If your stress is lower, you're performing better. Um, I heard on one site that it enabled, since it was so efficiently planned, et cetera, it enabled the cleanest job site they'd ever seen, which enables a better safe environment. And I think with our history of safety in the construction industry, anything we can do, whether it be AI, whether it be looking at collaborative planning or readjusting or making it a cleaner job site, that's got to help with the safety metrics that everyone is watching right now in the industry. It couldn't be a better time to be in the contact environment. It's helping in not only the personal and human ways, but in the efficiency ways and making it's the tagline transforming the industry to build a better nation. I can't say enough about that.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up. But before we close, any thoughts on things that you want to be sure to emphasize with our listeners as we close the podcast on context and how it can impact them and the way they engineer or construct?
I'll go first. Don't be afraid of technology. The dynamic that we have of the experienced constructor working very closely with uh, the new constructor enables a very good exchange of what's available in terms of technology, how to use it, how to be effective with it. It can be kind of intimidating, as Brett alluded to earlier, just setting up and getting a technology implemented successfully through an entire organization is extremely difficult. It takes persistence. It takes top-down leadership saying, "This is the way we're gonna do it." It takes that open-mindedness of the experienced constructor learning from people who have grown up in the technology world and vice versa. It takes that technology-driven individual learning from the experienced constructor on just your innate knowledge. So that leads to the collaboration statement. Collaboration, go forth without fear, learn from each other, ask questions. I think that's what's going to make construction better. Brett?
Um, I mean, for me, I would just say, look, the buildings that we're building aren't getting easier, right? The industry is moving, a lot of the industry is moving towards bigger, better, more complex, more efficient. Um, and I think that the marriage, or the balance of innovation and people-focused leadership, is going to be really important to continue to move the industry forwards and to allow us to build better and build faster. When you look at where money's being spent, obviously data center is a huge boom, but then, advanced manufacturing and healthcare and biopharma and, infrastructure, I think all these things that are coming back to, right? I mean, we originally started having this conversation around oil and gas and maintenance, right? And what it's going to mean for that. But I think at the heart of it, and my wife's a planner, I'm a planner. I think you execute better when you have a good plan. When you have a plan in general. And that can start all the way as early as the pre-con phase through construction. Um, so I think like having that visibility, having that data, being able to be proactive and what technology can do in that regards, we just shouldn't be afraid of. And I think that's going to help us build better, deliver better, be safer, and get more sleep.
Well, that's a good way to close. Anything that we can do to improve our psychological safety, whether it's on the job or in our personal lives, the whole trend, if you will, in mental health and wellness. It sounds like we found something else that can make a big difference there, and I'm so glad we touched on that because safety, of course, is one of the most important, if not the most important thing when we're doing engineering and construction. Before we close, could you tell us if a listener wants to get in touch with MOCA or one of you or find out more about Touchplan, where could they go? What are the resources available to them? Like a website or
So users
that?
users could go to touchplan .io, right? Or they could go to MOCA Systems. Um, there's a lot of different places where they can interact with us too. So I think the websites are a great place to start if you want to fill out a form. You could feel free to reach out to me directly if you wanted to, or Sandy, and we can get you in touch with either ourselves or someone on our teams that um, can answer the questions that you might have. But happy to take anyone that wants to reach out. Please feel free. There's a lot of different ways.
Now there's mocasystems.com or touchplan.io. You can also give us a call, 210-887-7496.
You can say it again one more time. Your phone.
Yes, 210-887-7496.
Hey, you can't get better than that.
That's right. Call
Well, this
direct.
is this has been a delightful conversation, and I've learned so much. And I know that it's hard to say goodbye because I know there's so much more we could talk about. And just to our listeners, if you have anything you'd like to share with us at Get the Knack, our website or our contact is naocon.org. And you can certainly contact Sue Steele as well as the host. We will continue to have more podcasts on innovation and technology, just like this one. And I encourage you to go back and listen to the first podcast that we had on the data center explosion. So now this will be our second one. And, we'll just continue to monitor the market and what's happening. And perhaps we might have a third one. We never know. But thank you so much, Brett and Sandy, for this time. Thank you for your expertise and your insights. And Get the Knack will be back soon with more content. Have a safe day.